Okay, hello everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday lunch hour for our first kickoff webinar for the National Capital section of the year. My name is Marian Bello. I have the honor of being the president of the National Capital section for this year. And since we do have a pretty packed agenda, I think I'll get started. As many of you would have seen through the invite, we're doing two different purposes of this webinar today. We're going to be honoring our 2021 recipient of the AMCON Lifetime Achievement Award and also hearing about the Flora Footbridge project over the Rideau Canal. So we have right here, if you follow this, I usually put this up, our LinkedIn page. We've had it going since last year. And if you want to stay up to date with our events, please make sure to add yourself to our mailing list or to follow us on LinkedIn. The first thing I wanted to do is usually for obvious reasons, we can't meet in person. And typically in the first event of the year, we do tend to welcome our new executive team for the National Capital section. Unfortunately, we can't make them stand up to an entire room and wave this year. So just highlighting them this year. These are my fellow executive team members who put in a lot of work to make sure that these events and all of our initiatives get carried out. So if you see your colleagues, your peers, please make sure to congratulate them on their role and to thank them for their contributions to our community. I also want to highlight Patrick McMahon from the City of Ottawa. He's not technically on the executive team, but he is helping out our events portfolio. And Patrick, you've been very instrumental in making events like this happen. So thank you to you as well. All right. Now, without further ado, we'll start off with the first part of this webinar. I'm going to introduce the recipient of our award this year, and then my colleague Sean also has a couple of words to say. To start off with, on behalf of the ITE National Capital section, I'm very proud to recognize David Kriger as our 2021 recipient of the AMCON Lifetime Achievement Award. Born and raised in Ottawa, David completed his Bachelor of Engineering degree at the University of Toronto and his Master's of Engineering and Master's of City Planning degrees at the University of Pennsylvania, which today makes him one of those rare combinations of both a licensed professional engineer and a registered professional planner. David's entire career, spanning nearly 4 decades and still going strong, has been focused on transportation planning. Shortly after completing his master's degrees, David started working for the former Regional Municipality of Ottawa-Carleton in Systems Planning branch of the Transportation Planning Division. And after a number of years there, David joined the consulting world and worked on a wide variety of transportation planning projects, both for firms such as B.Eng Consulting Group, Delcan, iTrans, all while based in either Ottawa or Toronto. Eventually became vice president of iTrans HDR before starting his own very successful consulting firm, David Kriger Consulting, in 2011. Today, David is known locally across Canada and internationally as an expert in travel demand forecasting models, travel surveys and data collection strategies, goods movement plans, surveys and forecasting models, travel trend analysis, and general transportation planning best practices. Over his storied career, David has also been an active member of multiple transportation engineering and planning industry organizations and communities, including ITE International, TAC, TRB in the US, and OPPI in Ontario, and has contributed to growing industry knowledge and best practices. In the nomination for this award, David was described by his nominators as a person with great skills, dedication, integrity, and contributions to both his profession and community, a key industry resource and mentor to many past and present colleagues, and someone with significant ability to make a difference to his clients, his colleagues, and the world at large. And those are quotes directly from your nomination package, David. Wow. These qualities make him a standout nominee, so it is my great honor to celebrate David's achievement today. Congratulations, David. With that, I'll pass it on to Sean, who has a story to share.
Yes, thank you, Maria. And I want to tell everybody about the first time that I met David Kriger. It was 38 years ago in the spring of 1983, and I had just completed my Bachelor of Engineering degree at Carleton, and I was going to start my master's degree that fall, and I needed a job for the summer. We've all been there. Fortunately, Professor Kahn at Carleton had some connections, and he pointed me towards a fellow named Louis Chalau, who was the manager of the systems planning branch at the Regional Municipality of Ottawa-Carleton, which was then located at 222 Queen Street, west of Bank Street. And for all of you historians, that's where the Capitol Square Cinemas used to be. I was hired, and on the first day, Louis introduced me to the two engineers who worked for him and told them, guys, this is Sean. He's your student for the summer. Keep him busy. And he turned around and walked away. One of those fellows was David, and he turned to his colleague, Neil Monkman, and said, did you know we were getting a student? And so clearly I was off to a really good start. But I needn't have worried at all because David got me busy with all sorts of things right away. The most important of those was that David was maintaining the region's transportation network planning model. It was using a system called the Urban Transportation Planning System, or UTPS, which is a large mainframe computer-based type of model. And that system and David's work on it was overseen by the Trans Committee, a group that exists to this day. The model was housed in a large computer at a service bureau off-site, and the only way to communicate with this computer was through boxes of punch cards. One card for each line of code, and remember folks, this was before the internet and before PCs and all that good stuff. David would run the model every day, and he immediately got me helping him with this. I would take David's instructions, translate them into punch cards, put all of the cards in the correct order, package the cards in boxes, and get them shipped over to the Service Bureau's location, which, as I recall, I think was somewhere on Carling Avenue. Yeah. The next morning, David would receive a box with a giant printout on 11 by 17 accordion computer paper, inches thick, and the whole process would begin again through the day. But that wasn't all we did. That was the summer that the regional government in Ottawa bought the very first IBM PC for government. It was an expensive high-end one with 512K of RAM, no less, so that they could run a new transportation network planning model called Motors that had, very coincidentally for me, being a Dillon guy, been developed by Dillon Consulting back in the day. I got to learn how to use this newfangled thing that was called DOS in order to make the computer do things. I also began using an operations research computer package called Lindo in order to test out the optimum location for a new regional snow dump site. What we did was we calculated the amount of snow that had to be removed from all roads in the urban area, actually measured it all, and then used the software to minimize the trucking required to move the snow to various combinations of snow dump sites. Anyway, I learned two things that summer. First was that this business of transportation planning was pretty cool, and David needs to be thanked for that. He treated me as an actual intelligent person, not just a student. He gave me real assignments to do, and his enthusiasm was infectious. The second thing I learned was that I needed to stay connected with this guy because I thought I could learn an awful lot from him about transportation planning and about being a great professional in the field. Fortunately, I've been able to stay in touch with David over the past 4 decades as our careers have evolved. Whether it was his initial move into consulting, his move to the Toronto area, and coming back to Ottawa, all of his international travels for work. If you get him in a bar sometime, ask him about his serious earthquake experience when he was in Central America, among other things. Or setting up his own firm. I've been fortunate to be able to chat and meet with David regularly over the years, learn from him, and enjoy a professional friendship that continues today. I'm not the only one who's benefited from David's experience and wisdom. He's certainly admired for his experience and his expertise in modeling, data collection, and analysis, and goods movement. He's also admired as a person. I know that many participating in this meeting today, as well as many, many others here in Ottawa, across Canada, and in the many places David visited, would certainly agree with me. David, I just wanted to say congratulations on receiving the CIT National Capital Section's Lifetime Achievement Award, named in honor of Professor Khan. It is a recognition that you've made a difference to improving the mobility here in Ottawa, as well as many other cities, and advancing our profession. Thank you for all that you've done for our industry and that you continue to do to this day. Congratulations.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sean and Mariam. And Sean, you've never looked back, and I've always learned from you. And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be a friend over all these years. So just to show you, first of all, so thank you all very much. Mariam and Sean, thank you very much for your kind words, very kind words. I really want to express my thanks to all of you and to the nominating committee for thinking of me. I'm very humbled, actually, very honored by this award. I know Dr. Khan has been a mentor to many of us. I didn't have him as a professor, but I did get the opportunity and the privilege of working with him, and of course, working with many of his proteges and students over the years. So for me, I've been very fortunate in my career. That's the way I look at it. I've had a lot of opportunities, things I'd never dreamed of happening, been put in front of me, and especially meeting people and working with people over the years, and a lot here and in a lot of different places. That's been huge. That's everything. So as Mariam and Sean have mentioned, I've been at it for about 40 years. Time does pass very quickly. A lot, of course, has changed in that time. Thinking of CITE, I think it has a lot to offer to transportation professionals. I think its focus on the practical side of things, on ways to improve mobility, provides a really big tent home for us, for the community, for the transportation community, and a way for professionals to learn and from each other and to contribute to the profession as well. Now that we're all digitally connected, and it means we can work with people from around the world. And one of the things I've learned is that there's a lot of ideas out there, things that we can take back and bring to bear here in our own backyard. And to me, that's really the shape of the future, just being able to do that. So I hope, we all collectively as a community can go forward and take advantage of those opportunities, because getting engaged beyond our own boundaries, our own home, because really to me, that's the way of the future. So I just want to say again, thank you very, very much. I'm quite humbled and quite honored, and thank you all for thinking of me. And it's been so rewarding and so exciting in so many ways over the years. And the ride isn't over yet. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you for that, David. I know it's not the same applause, but
That's okay.
we're doing what we can with what we have here today. And thank you, Sean, for offering that story. I think that was very touching, and also a good reminder for why David was such a worthy nominee. And again, congratulations, David, for all of your achievements. And we look forward. We look forward to seeing what you keep doing with your career that continues to go on strong.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm so glad that we were able to do that, even if not in person. I think it's a very special moment, and as David had mentioned, it's very important to have that sense of community, especially in a time when we're all very connected and still sometimes can feel very far away from each other. So I'm grateful that we were able to come here together. I do want to remind everybody, this is a different platform from what we've used in the past. You can interact using the chat function here. Just note that I think everybody would be able to see your chats. And as we go into the presentation portion of this webinar, there's also a Q&A, a questions tab that you're able to send in your questions. After our presenters finish, we'll make sure to try and go through as many questions as we can to make sure that they get answered. So as you have questions coming up, please make sure to use the questions function. And if you have anything you wanted to say to David or to the rest of the group, feel free to use the chat function, as well as if you need any technical assistance. Okay, so with that, I will move on into our presentation here. Today's presentation is going to be focused on the Flora Footbridge, which is a new addition and is probably a fixture that people have had a chance to see. The construction completed in 2019. It's a new active transportation connection over the Rideau Canal. So I will introduce our two speakers today before we get started. Oh, sorry, I just saw a question that says there's no chat box, only a questions box. Okay, so only a questions box. Apologies, I can't see the attendees view, but feel free to use the questions box. And if there is something that you want me to share with the rest of the group, I will do my best to do that. Okay, so moving into our speakers, we have two speakers today from Jacobs and DTAH who will be presenting, we're involved with, and will be presenting on the Flora Footbridge project. Tim Dickinson. Tim is a registered professional planner with 17 years of experience in the private sector consulting industry, focusing on city, infrastructure, and transportation planning. His work includes a mix of city building, transit, and active transportation planning projects that are helping to progress the sustainable development of major cities across Canada, including Toronto, Ottawa, and Vancouver. Tim was a core team member responsible for planning the Flora Footbridge, which, in addition to addressing a missing link in the city's active transportation network, has also become an instantly recognizable landmark in the city. Tim is joined by Mark Langridge from DTAH. Mark is an architect with over 30 years of experience. He's a partner at DTAH and leads the firm's bridge design portfolio. He has particular expertise in transportation infrastructure projects that require collaborative design and stakeholder engagement. He consistently delivers high-quality work, which has resulted in multiple design awards for the firm. Notable projects in Mark's portfolio include the Flora Footbridge, the Vimy Memorial Bridge, and Corktown Footbridge in Ottawa, as well as Garrison Crossing in Toronto and East Hamilton Waterfront Link Bridge. Mark was a principal author of the Ministry of Transportation Ontario's Aesthetic Guidelines for Bridges and currently serves on Metrolinx's design review panel as a specialist in bridge design. Thank you, Mark and Tim, for joining us today. I think, Tim, you are going to be going first. So you want to put yourself back on camera, and I will use this very fancy functionality to make you the presenter. 1 second.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that introduction. I was hoping Sean would give a story about first meeting me, but I guess there's not enough time today. It's a tough act to follow. Congratulations, David. It's quite an honor. I have, sorry, can you see this? I'm having a hard time seeing both the screen and the webinar, but am I sharing my presentation?
I don't see it yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, sorry, let me try this.
No worries. Did you get a little pop-up where
I did,
this is
yeah.
growing pains? Fancy new platform stuff.
Oh wait, what's this?
There we go.
People
Yeah.
can see, and you see the presentation, not my face. Okay.
I see both, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Okay. So yeah, thank you. I am going to run through some of the planning considerations for the bridge and really sort of tee Mark up for some of the the exciting stuff, which is I think the finished product. So without further ado, so this project, I'm sort of going back into the memory bank a little bit. We started this actually more than 10 years ago. And I full disclosure, I no longer work with the firm that I did when we did this planning work. So a lot of this material, Mark was kind enough to share with me, and the rest of it was really drawn from publicly available sources. So I think that's maybe a testament to some of the engagement, public communication work that we did. But you'll see some of if the resolution is not great, it's because most of this was pulled from the city's website and other sources that I could find online. So I'm also sort of testing my memory bank a little bit. But so we started in 2010, actually, was when the city first put out the statement of work for an environmental assessment to address the need, which was identified as this section between Pretoria Bridge and Bank Street Bridge was really the longest linear barrier to east-west active transportation travel in kind of urban Ottawa. And you can see the purple circles here are all of the other bridges across the canal. The canal is obviously a fantastic resource, but it does create some challenges and serves as a barrier for movement. And this was what the city looked to address through this planning process. this was really interesting. You know, this wasn't the need for this wasn't new. It actually shows up first in the 1915 Holt Plan for Ottawa, with a new crossing at 5th and Clegg. It showed up again in the Krieger plan in 1950. Up until 1950, the NCC used to operate a ferry service at this location across the canal. And you can see here on the left, they actually operate or commissioned a wooden footbridge across the ice in winter that operated in the 50s and 60s. So, you know, it took more than a century to make this happen, but it's always been part of the plan, and it was really nice to see it finally come to life. In terms of the potential, so this was some of the work we did to identify what potential usage of the bridge. So we looked at the OD survey, we looked at travel, trip patterns and mode share. What we found was that there was a significant reduction in active trips between neighborhoods across the canal, and this is obvious, you know, for obvious reasons. But we speculated or projected that if we could fix this link, and start to see mode shares similar to other neighborhoods that don't have this east-west travel barrier, that we could estimate about 1,500 to 2,500 trips a day across a new active transportation link in this location. This is my only slide on process, and I won't spend a lot of time. I did dive back into the archives there, so you can see the picture from our first visioning workshop. I can see Michel Vachon, who's since retired, but was the lead bridge engineer. Peter Stacey, I don't see in this picture, or maybe I do see him actually sitting next to Michel. But anyway, the process, it was a municipal Schedule C municipal Class EA, because the lands adjacent to the canal are owned and managed by the NCC. We had to go through their federal land use and design approvals process. And then also because the canal walls and the canal itself are under the jurisdiction of Parks Canada, we also had to comply with and work through their process and the management plan for the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So there was extensive public engagement. This graphic is really showing the process up to the end of our recommended plan. You'll see when I get to the end of this presentation that was not the end of the story, and Mark will pick it up there and sort of take it through to what you see out there today. But we did have, you know, as I mentioned before, we assessed the project need, we identified what some of the potential benefits would be. We worked with the community and the technical stakeholders to develop a vision for the crossing, which I think was really unique in this project. That's what this photo is from, but this wasn't just bringing together, you know, all of the various agencies and city departments. We invited and brought the community to those meetings as well, and it really helped build support and develop a framework and a vision for the crossing that really guided us throughout the process. We had to look at location alternatives, design alternatives, and ultimately a recommended plan. So in terms of the crossing type, we did look at what made the most sense in this context. We did look at going under. I think in the end, for safety, security reasons, long-term maintenance issues, we quickly discarded the option of going under the canal. We did look at movable mid-level bridges in order to minimize some of the ramping requirements. However, again, for long-term maintenance issues, this was not preferable. So we landed pretty quickly on the need for a high-level fixed bridge. And you can see, and this graphic is in the center showing what the implications are on those ramps in order to accommodate, and I'll show you the next slide here because this is more telling, but you know, at first glance, you'd think that crossing at the narrowest point of the canal would be preferable. However, because the canal operations require this navigational envelope, which is rather significant, it doesn't actually benefit you to cross the narrowest part of the canal. You end up with significantly longer ramps on land adjacent to the canal. So the location at the bottom is actually at 5th and Clegg, and you can see where, you know, the widest point of the canal was actually beneficial to use the width of the canal to make the grade required and actually avoid some of the ramping requirements, not all. So ultimately, we did recommend a high-level fixed bridge at the widest part of the canal. We looked at various, I could spend an hour on this slide, but we did look at various location alternatives. The key considerations here are the availability of landing space and the topography primarily, as well as the network. You can see where we did wind up at 5th and Clegg. It is sort of one of the only logical crossing locations for cyclist traffic. And it also is the widest part of the canal, which I just talked about. It has available landing space, although not, it had landing space that we had to work with. Certainly to the north, that was not the case. The canal was very narrow and we would have had long ramps. And then the closer you go to the south to Lansdowne, the grade change is significant and you'd actually end up sort of flying over the canal entirely and not connecting to the pathways down below. So through a variety of considerations, and I can't get into all of them now, but the logical choice was 5th and Clegg. So some of the design principles, and these I'm just going to quickly run through because I think you can, what's impressive to me, and after finally seeing the bridge finished, is how closely we were able to kind of achieve a lot of our design principles, and that's a credit to Michelle and the structural team and Mark and the architectural team. But yeah, I mentioned we had to maintain our navigational envelope. And you'll see a lot of reference to this idea of being compact, transparent, quiet, gentle, being as slender and light in the landscape as possible. This was seen as a real desire in this location, in this setting, to not make an enormous statement. This is an understated part of the canal. It's a quiet residential section, and I think there was a strong desire that this should be, should fit seamlessly into that landscape. I think when you're out there today, I think most would agree that we've managed to achieve that. Minimizing long ramps over the water and a parallel of the canal banks, again using the width of the canal to our advantage. We had to maintain the continuity of the canal walls. So the canal walls are actually what is designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. So we were not able to play with them at all. So the canal walls had to be maintained. We needed to minimize piers in the water, integrate as seamlessly as possible with the pedestrian and cycling networks, and obviously provide universal access. So those were some of the design principles that we set out to achieve. These were some early explorations. We did look at the top left was using long switchback ramps over the water. I think we all agreed that that probably wasn't the right solution in this setting. Immediately to the right, you can see using the long ramps going south of the 5th and Clegg crossings in order to make up that grade. What we did wind up with is shown in the bottom left, or at least this is an early iteration of where we landed, which was sort of a curving bridge to the south of the intersection and spanning Colonel By Drive and landing in the median between Colonel By and Echo Drive with a switchback ramp structure. And then this sort of last iteration was looking at, could you avoid the switchback ramp by, some form of curling ramp structure adjacent to the canal walls. But ultimately, it was this configuration was viewed as having the most potential and the least impact. There were significant concerns, surprisingly. There was broad support for this project. We were a little bit the victim of timing in that the Lansdowne Park redevelopment project was sort of at its height in terms of community concerns and opposition. One of the major concerns that we dealt with early on was parking. So the perception that this new link was going to create parking lot in Ottawa, in Old Ottawa East and South, and particularly during major events at Lansdowne Park. So we had to do quite a lot of work to kind of prove that that was not likely to be the case. So these were just showing some of the walking times and the impact on parking availability. What we found was there would be a slight increase in parking saturation kind of at the bridge head, but beyond that, there's better places to park and walk. So the other major kind of concern was around the visual impacts and canal views. Now, we did quite a lot of work to look at what might look like. This is one looking from Echo Drive. The major concern from these property owners was obviously the impact to their view of the canal, and on the right you can see sort of superimposed the ramp structure. We selected that location. One of the primary reasons is because the median was so vegetated and that there was not sort of these broad open views during the summertime anyway. So it, was probably the least impactful location, but there's no doubt there is an impact, and the city and Mark and his team worked quite diligently to try to address it. I know that iterations of the ramp structure design did look to kind of minimize the visual intrusion, and the landscape design was sort of set up with a similar goal in mind. So design evolution. So this is just sort of showing, it really did begin as sort of some sketches, which I find quite amazing that, sort of the vision that was established very early on is very similar to what you see out there today. So, but some of the sketching in terms of, this concept of a thin light deck with the V-shaped piers, the white color was always there. This idea of this thin line floating through the landscape, working with this is the East Landing adjacent to the Canal Ritz restaurant and the Lily Pond, and working to kind of integrate that into the landscape. So, there was a lot of work done by, the bridge architects and the bridge designers in order to sort of turn this vision into a reality, which at the end of the planning process, and these are my last few slides, but this was kind of the enduring images of the bridge from that planning process. So this is, the recommended plan, which was a continuously curving bridge to the south of 5th and Clegg, integrating the west landing with a redesign and Lily Pond, using the curve and the width of the canal in order to make the grade up over the navigational envelope. The original concept did widen out at center span, so to provide a bit of a place to kind of hang out, and then landing down, spanning over Colonel By Drive and landing in the median, which is more or less what you do see today, which is here, which I think is fairly representative of what happened in the end. So this is a view of the original concept for the west landing, looking towards Lansdowne Park again, integrating this landscape, using the Lily Pond as sort of a landscape feature. This is a view at dusk, and I think there were certainly some changes to the concept, but I think the general sort of vision was certainly achieved in terms of that. Those design principles that I talked about before. And here's another one. If you were out there today, maybe not today, you might fall through the ice, but a couple of weeks ago with the view from the canal itself, I think is very close to what you would experience if you were there today. So, and the last one, I got these numbers from the city, so thank you to Jessica and Megan for providing me with some numbers from the counters that they had out there. But these are showing some of the success, which, there's been 1.3 million trips to date. It's about 2/3 pedestrian versus cycling. And, I talked earlier about, we had projected somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500 trips per day. The actual has been about 2,300, but obviously much higher than that in the summertime months, dipping down in the depths of winter. I still find it amazing that we're getting numbers kind of between 500 and 1,000 trips per day in February across the structure. So from my perspective, it was a huge success and a lot of fun to work on. So with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Mark to show you his thoughts on this project. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for that, Tim. And just as a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions as they come up, feel free to throw them into the question bar. So I'll pass it on to Mark. Mark, are you, oh no, did I make myself?
Okay, I'm unmuted.
You are unmuted. So Stephen, are you there? I'm pressing. Oh, there we go.
Got it. Just did it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it wasn't doing anything. I was saying make presenter and it was not cooperating. Perfect. You're good, Mark. Thank you.
Great. We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for your interest in this. Here's a shot of the bridge by night. Shows what a photographer can do with a few filters. And somehow he made midsummer look like midwinter. But it is the summer. This was a very special project for us. a rare opportunity to create a signature bridge in a beautiful setting. People have always wanted to cross the canal here, as Tim said, but we realized early on that this was a very different bridge than the one we did at Corktown. 125 meter span here at the wide part of the canal instead of the 46 meter span at Corktown. So this is where we ended up on the bridge design in late 2016. After the curving bridge concept that Tim finished on, there was a 4-year gap. A couple of embarrassing city bridge projects, one out towards the airport on the Parkway, value engineering workshops, and the outcome of all of this was the city instructing a straighter, simpler bridge. And so because we wanted to carry on doing the detailed design, that was the direction that was pursued. So on the west side, we kept open the idea of a curve. So there's a 100-meter long pathway sloping up at 5% from 5th and the restaurant to a new lookout space.
Sorry, Tim. Sorry, Mark. I'm saying that nobody can see it. So 1 second. I'm just gonna. People are saying they could see Tim's screen, but they can't see Mark's screen. So, sorry to interrupt you on there.
Okay.
I can see Mark's screen.
Yeah, I can see it fine too.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions saying I can't see the screen yet. I just have a screen saying waiting to view Tim Dickinson's screen, which is not correct. Cannot see any images. Any ideas quickly, Stephen? Is this try logging in again?
The only other thing I can think of is to mark to stop presenting and then try presenting again.
Okay.
How do I
They're
stop?
also saying they can see it, so I'm going to stop. Sorry about this, Mark.
Okay.
Is it dismiss, Stephen?
No, Mark
No.
just needs to stop sharing his screen and then reshare it.
So do I go to sharing?
Yeah, and just stop and then start again.
We're also saying I refreshed and I can see it, so maybe that is also
Might be just a few people having the issue. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're good. I think for
Okay.
those people who are having a problem, just maybe try refresh or log back in. Should do it. But everything looks good.
So we're
So
good?
thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Mark.
So we have a main span over the canal and Colonel By of 125 meters, and then on the east side we come down with a switchback ramp and pedestrian stair in the median. It was decided to increase the width of the deck from 4 meters to 5 meters to best accommodate all the users. This is the same width as Corktown Footbridge, and it's consistent with the notion that the entire bridge will function as a lookout rather than having separate projecting lookouts. So the design allows the flexibility for people to stop and enjoy the view anywhere along the bridge. The proposed cross section was 5 meters clear width. We originally suggested a 3-meter zone in the middle as a travel through zone, and then a 1 meter zone either side as a slow zone. And we proposed a special wearing surface on the deck, applied in different colors so that the central part might be in a typical multi-use pathway gray and with a warmer pedestrian kind of color each side. We looked at some precedents about how to demarcate shared use space. The 2 images on the left from the US show more traditional traffic engineer approach to demarcation, more about trying to separate different modes and lots of line painting, symbols and arrows. The middle images show the Calatrava Bridge in Calgary. There's a central faster zone about 3 meters wide with no line markings, and slightly raised pedestrian zones each side. But at the end of the day, you can see from these photos, the bridge still needs to function as a shared use zone. People will go where they want to go. Everyone has to be ready to slow down and take care, especially cyclists. And then on the right, these show a couple of approaches to integral colour. The top from the UK in a way that demarcates territory, and the bottom right from Auckland in New Zealand uses bold, distinctive colour to identify a special shared use zone with no line painting at all. So on the bridge itself, the initial proposal was striped slow zones on each side in a brighter, distinctive colour, and a central zone in a more neutral colour. Transition zones at each end, and approach pathways in a standard multi-use pathway asphalt with thermoplast treatment, and the minimum amount of symbols and text that communicates the message, like the bottom left. This is shared space, go slowly, take care. So it ended up, of course, bilingual, but that was the only signage that ended up. One of the original renderings showing the east side landing with the switchback ramp and the stone-clad stair element leading to a new pedestrian plaza around the existing oak tree. A rendering showing the bridge during Winterlude. The elliptical bridge piers were actually built with a curving bench so that skaters could take a break, retie their skates. So this was a wonderful concept, but unfortunately the piers have become the snow storage zone in winter, so they are not usable. But if you did shovel the snow away, they are there. A plan view of the east side landing showing the new unit paved plaza terminating Echo Drive, and the most complicated bicycle network traffic management around an intersection that I've ever seen. On the west side, the landing's key challenge was the Crossroads, where the new bridge sloping pathway would meet the main multi-use pathway. So the original concept was a roundabout, perhaps marked by a tree to encourage cyclists to slow down, especially coming off the bridge, and make a careful decision as to which direction to proceed. And now to a series of photos of how it all turned out in reality. So starting at the East Side Plaza under the oak tree, the Grand Stair. So even though it's two quite long flights, because we had to get up to 6 meters high, the tread and the 12-inch tread and 6-inch riser combination make it comfortable to use, and it still saves about 140 meters. So lots of people choose the shortcut as shown here, especially when so many cyclists are taking the switchback ramp option. The typical multi-use pathway asphalt and signage markings is visible on the lower leg of the ramp here. And then the surface changes at the landing to force cyclists to slow down and do a careful U-turn. A view from the top of the stairs showing all the latest AODA accessibility requirements, a tactile warning surface indicators, the studs at the top of each flight, and stainless steel, individually screwed, contrasting stair nosings at the edge of each tread. This shows a nice view of the oak tree, which fortunately has stayed alive through the construction and is thriving. The deck ended up with no markings, and in the end it was decided to proceed with this matte acryl epoxy surfacing with inlaid coloured aggregate to protect the concrete decking, and it also gives us a warm, distinctive colour. So wood was a very important part of the materials palette. So extremely hard and durable ipe wood was used for the handrails throughout, and also at the west side landing shown here, where we designed a feature elliptical bench in ipe wood trimmed with the stainless steel. This is how the west side roundabout concept turned out in reality. A more triangular low flower planter to maximize clear sight lines for everyone, and very thoughtful use of how to do the yellow striping to indicate the main pathway and the offshoot pathway. The west side multi-use pathway takes you right under the bridge. And there's a good view here of the bridge V piers in summer. So as Tim said, we tried to get the structure as light and transparent as we could visually. And just to note that the winter water level is 4 feet lower than the summer. And so that's why you can't see those little projecting shelves on the concrete portion of the pier. And the last shot here, back on the east side multi-use pathway, showcasing all of the transportation mode opportunities available along this part of the Rideau, including the water traffic. And so we ask, who needs a car anyway? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. I think, let me just, I think you can stop presenting. I think that function is with you. And luckily we have some time for questions now. So I will return back. Okay, perfect. People can see me. We have had a couple of questions in. If anybody else from the audience has some questions, please feel free to send them in. I think the first question we've had is actually maybe for Tim. Question is, how did you predict the number of trips across the bridge?
Yeah, thanks. So we looked at really at the trip data from the OD survey, and we compare. It was really a comparative estimate. So we looked at trips between neighborhoods, traffic zones that exhibit similar characteristics in terms of built form, density, but didn't have the canal acting as a barrier. And really, we just made an assumption that we would see similar trip patterns between Ottawa East and the Glebe if a connection was made. So it didn't actually account for any recreational traffic or travel. So it was sort of conservative in a regard, but obviously we provided a range. So I think the actual numbers we're seeing, which are so much higher in the summertime, are obviously reflective of that this has become a very popular recreational loop. I think there's significant number of joggers and cyclists that do the loop between Corktown and Flora Footbridge. Certainly I did, and I think the pandemic probably increased that even more. So yeah, it was a comparative estimate.
Okay, thanks.
It was probably more luck than anything that it ended up so close to it.
A lot of things in transportation planning, we don't like to say that, but sometimes it's just having really good hunches on some estimates. The next question I have here, I think it's for Mark. The question is, what is the design turning radius at the switchback on the bike ramp on the east side of the bridge? I think this question is specifically saying that this person has experienced maybe a couple of close calls and is just curious.
Okay, I don't have it.
Yeah.
Right top of mind. All I can say is that the switchback ramp was very tight to squeeze in on the median in between Echo Drive and Colonel By, and so we had to go to a 3 meter wide pathway for both of those legs of the switchback, with I think 1 meter in between. So it did mean that, right, if you're coming downhill and they're the cyclists that are going faster, then at least that downhill cyclist can see, has a bit more of an overview and can take a wider turn than the uphill cyclist. But we just had to kind of compromise, because the uphill cyclist, to swing around on that radius, really has to swing over, right, to the left a little bit. And so there's definitely was the potential, right, for some conflict. A mirror was talked about at that point as well. I'm not sure, to date, I don't think it has been put in. But I think, you know, they were going to wait and see what sort of happened. And so the signage was put in there to just say to everybody, slow down, be careful, like, which is the most important message to cyclists. If we had a bigger turning radius, it's just going to encourage people to go faster.
Fair enough. Okay, thanks for answering that one. The next question is maybe for both of you. The question is, who are the structural engineers involved on the project?
Well, that was WSP, and so they were the structural engineers and the civil engineers and the transportation engineers on it. So it was Michel Vachon, was the main structural engineer, and assisted by Matt, whose last name escapes me right now.
Okay, thanks. The question here, was there reluctance by the city to use the IPE wood on the railings?
Let's say there was a lot of skepticism early on. Wood had not been used in Ottawa, especially. So I think the city had some concerns about it from an ongoing maintenance perspective. And so what we, especially with the tendency of any wood over time to bend and warp and split a little bit. So we put it screw fixed to continuous steel angle on the underside so that we could try and keep it straight and true. But we heard from many people that they love to touch, you know, the warmth of real wood. You know, it's nice to lean on, it's nice to touch. So trying to incorporate that, a natural material, into the palette, you know, ended up ruling the day, at least, you know, visually and at a place where people could touch it.
Okay, maybe one more from Mark here is, in terms of the nighttime lighting, the lighting looks like it's at 4,000 or 4,500 degrees Kelvin in terms of color temperature. Why did you choose such a cool temperature instead of something a bit warmer?
Okay, I'd have to check that, because we typically try and not go above, like 2,500 or 3,000. There have been some challenges with the lighting, and particularly making sure that the angle from the integrated lighting and the handrail on the main deck illuminates the central portion of the deck a little bit more. And I think there's still some work going on to improve that. As to the color temperature, we would agree that 3,000 is probably as high as you want to go, in order that it doesn't become too bright and white.
You're getting all the technical questions here, Mark. Okay, thanks for that one. I think I have a question for both of you, and maybe Tim, you can take this one first. This project seems to have had quite a bit of stakeholder engagement and various I don't know if interest is the right term, but I'm curious if both of you could speak a little bit to that experience of trying to get everybody on the same page and in agreement over plans and then ultimately designs. Maybe Tim, did you want to start that one?
Sure. Yeah. I sort of looked after a lot of that, so I have fond memories. It was yeah, we had a lot of interest. We had a very active community association, and actually a community association leader who had been pressing for this project. It's one of the only projects that I've been a part of that had such a positive kind of community support from the beginning. I mean, one of the reasons this project kind of showed up in the first place was, I think, a lot of the hard work of the community in pushing forward for it. Now we had to balance that obviously with some of the impacts, and I talked about, you know, there's no doubt there are some impacts, and some folks were going to be impacted more than others depending on decisions that were made. So we were very transparent about it. I think that one of the real successes was the amount, and Mark will probably agree, the unprecedented amount of visualizations that were done throughout the project. So, you know, I think I touched on sort of some of them, but there are literally, you know, dozens and dozens of visualizations and iterations as we move through the process to try to, and they were accurate as well, which is, I think, you know, not always the case with these projects, but they were, I think we did put a lot of emphasis and effort on showing what the bridge was likely to look like and what those impacts were likely to be, and ultimately kind of stood behind it when we had to explain what those trade-offs were. But broadly speaking, I mean, public meetings were, you know, a lot of people coming to tell us how wonderful they thought this was going to be, and if it wasn't for, you know, getting caught up a little bit in the Lansdowne controversy just in general, and as well as Mark mentioned, some of the other city bridge projects that had kind of been going on, those were really the only complications from a stakeholder perspective. Otherwise, you know, we had a lot of support.
And I would just say, I mean, there were 4 public open houses, and I agree with Tim. They were very well attended. We were very open about sharing our thinking, and like perhaps sharing some ideas and visualizing them and asking people for their feedback. And so I think 3D visualization is huge, and then showing it in a way that people can really visualize what it's going to look like. So they were some of the most successful public open houses that we've attended because of that, because of the openness and the transparency.
Great, thanks. I think we have time for just one last question. I only have one more in here. The question was snow removal by large machines part of the design needs for the ultimate design?
As I recall, it's,
Wait.
I think it's one of the smaller,
the sidewalk
motorized.
Plow. Yeah, the sidewalk plow was the design vehicle. Yeah, for snow removal. I don't know how they're actually doing it. It's a good question what they actually ended up doing, but that was the design vehicle we used, was the sidewalk plow.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know what they ended up using as well.
There's so many people using it, they don't need to plow it, maybe.
Wouldn't that be nice, hey? For all the municipalities. Okay, well, thank you both to Mark and Tim for presenting today and for sharing your experiences and for letting us know about this project. I agree. I think it's really quite a fixture now, especially in the Centertown area, which is also where I happen to live. So I have used the bridge quite a few times now. And thank you everybody for attending our webinar today. And one more last congratulations to David Kriger for his receipt of the award. And thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope this was informative, and please stay tuned for future events. Thanks again, Tim and Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Marianne.